Is this a pleasure contract? We just having fun in and out of the bed when we feel like it? Or is this a relationship where you're going to be accountable to me even when you are angry and upset and don't want to be bothered?
Dr. Umar Johnson is known for being very vocal when it comes to addressing issues that are plaguing the Black community. He recently did an interview over with the fellows at Hardly Initiated, and I gotta be honest, he touched on a lot of topics for both men and women that are gonna upset some folks. Welcome back to the Said What I Said show. I'm your host, Thatbaldbrutha, and before we get started in today's review, it's very important that we understand that just because someone's values and viewpoints don't 100% align with our way of thinking, that does not mean that everything that they say has no value or is invalid. There are instances where he makes some very valid points that we can cherry pick, take out, and hold on to, especially the ones that really resonate. Okay, now you with me? All right then, let's get into it.
Now, when you come to YouTube and you see the back and forth banter between the men and the women, a lot of that is due to poor political education and understanding of the reality. But another part of it is trauma. See, we got to understand when we get emotional, we're dealing with our unconscious pains and memories. Nobody's in the present moment when you get emotional. The minute you are overrun by your emotions, that's your trauma talking. And one of the reasons Black male-female relationships are so dysfunctional is you got traumatic man trying to relate to traumatic woman. Neither one of them is dealing with the person across the table because they're both reacting from past hurt, which is why I believe that when you get out of one relationship before you go into another one, you need a period of healing, because if in fact you were in love, it's going to take you a while to heal your soul back, because love is the process of two becoming one. When you are alone, your soul forces to the surface issues in your life that you need to address that you don't feel like addressing. Yeah. So how do you escape your internal demons? You run out and you date. And so in the Black community, dating and mating has become the newest drug. It's how we escape from taking responsibility for our emotional health.
Now that statement is very powerful. Recognizing that not dealing with our trauma, past traumas properly, has caused us to seek out dating. And I'm going to go out on a limb maybe and say this as a form of coping with that. I can speak from experience, having been divorced twice. After my first divorce, I didn't take time to deal with the hurt and pain that I felt from that first marriage. I ran right outside, jumped right back into trying dating again, because I was afraid of having to look in the mirror and face those demons, those dark shadows from my past that contributed to the demise of the first relationship, letting me know this is the roles you played, and these are the things that you haven't dealt with that are still plaguing you mentally. It wasn't until I got divorced a second time that I actually realized the importance of stopping and taking that time and spending that time by myself, learning how to love myself properly, and then seeking help from a therapist to help guide me through that journey to make sure that I was getting the right tools necessary to ensure that I would be ready mentally and emotionally for the next person that I ended up dating, so that I'd be much more of a whole person at that point. I could admit that I wasn't there yet. I also understand that a lot of us don't want to face that reality because we believe, same as I did, that we could somehow push through and just be better on our own without dealing with it. And as men, I can especially account for the fact that we have a tendency of suppressing our emotions, because we're taught at a young age that boys don't cry, you're not allowed to show emotion, don't be touchy-feely, you need to be very stoic, very stern, very firm. You need to be able to be even-keeled across the board. And unfortunately, that type of mindset has caused a lot of traumatic situations that men have faced to go unaddressed. And those unaddressed traumas tend to crop up down the road in our relationships as anger, sometimes violence, sometimes infidelity, or a combination of all three. And the important part I feel that he's trying to stress here is that we have to understand that this is an issue that we both, men and women, experience, and it needs to be properly addressed before getting into another relationship and moving forward in your life.
Money and sex, those two variables play too big of a role in our relationships. Sex is important, money is important, but they should not be the be all and end all of whether or not the relationship is going to make sense. And if money and sex are dominating the relationship is being ran on a superficial structure because money runs out. How you perform in bed, that will dim over time too. So we cannot be coming together for money and sex, because if that's the case, this really isn't a relationship, it's a pleasure contract.
It's very true that in today's modern relationship age, it feels like money and sex are more important than anything else. It doesn't matter where you stand morally, what are your values, are you God-fearing? None of those things matter. It only comes down to how much money you have and how good are you at sex. As he rightly pointed out, money can go away tomorrow. You can lose your job tomorrow, and then what? Sexual prowess dims over time. Eventually everything ain't gonna work 100% anyway. All you're going to be left with is each other. It's time that we get back to a space where we realize the importance of everything else, all the other layers involved in a relationship, and having those conversations where you're getting to know the person at a deeper level, asking the right questions, trying to find out, what did you experience in your past? How was your childhood? What did you go through? It may sound a little strange, but you want to uncover any past traumas, because those traumas, if you don't uncover them, are going to creep up in the relationship. We all have them, and you're never going to necessarily be able to get rid of those traumas. Your objective is to find ways to cope with that, find ways to make mental peace with that so that you can move forward. Because those traumas, while bad, are what made you who you are today. They help to give you the strength to continue to move forward, to be where you are today. You had to go through those things, unfortunately, to shape yourself and become the man or the woman you are today.
And a lot of us in the community have pleasure contracts we call relationships. And the difference between a pleasure contract and a relationship is a relationship requires obligation and accountability. See, when you have a pleasure contract, I sex my queen when I sex her. We go to the movies when we want to go to the movies. We go to the Bahamas when we want to go to the Bahamas. We go to the festival when we want to go to, it's all pleasure-based. Relationship, I'm accountable to you whether we having fun or not. Relationship, your long-term best interest as a human being is part of my responsibility. A lot of people are calling pleasure contracts and situationships, which is when neither one of you really know what the hell this is. We're calling them relationships and they're not. So number one, we got to be honest about what the particular structure is. Is this situationship? We just trying to figure it out. Is this a pleasure contract? We just having fun in and out of the bed when we feel like it? Or is this a relationship where you're going to be accountable to me even when you are angry and upset and don't want to be bothered? What exactly is this? Because there's a big difference. And unfortunately, because we don't communicate with the women in our lives as men, once they open their legs, they tend to assume that there's some sort of a relationship here. No matter how minuscule, we never clarify that. And the reason we never clarify that is in our selfishness as men, we like to have our cake and eat it too. So we know she's developing a bond. You understand? But we're never going to clarify the bond because I want to be able to dip out the back door the minute she puts too much responsibility on me. Where if you told her up front, this is just a pleasure contract, an arrangement, she could have probably done a better job of keeping her feelings to herself. But because we don't want to see her with nobody else, we would rather run the risk of hurting her spiritually and emotionally than let her go free to find what she really needs.
Understanding how relationships are really supposed to work is important if that's what your goal is. I like when he said something about the fact of pleasure contracts versus situationships versus relationships. The reality of it is, all too often, we are in pleasure contracts. We're not really being serious. We're just having a good time and masking it as being something more than it is. Relationships require accountability on both sides. Relationships require commitment from both sides. Relationships involve working together towards each other's best interests individually and collectively. Relationships require work, and people like to throw the word love and all other kind of cute words around and act like they got something going on when they really don't. I tell people all the time, love is not a noun. It is an action word. What you do, how you deal with someone, how you get along, the values you guys share, the time you spend together, how you weather the storms. That is what love is. Because it's easy to get angry and get upset, and as he said, dip out the back door at the first sign of trouble. But if you're really serious and committed to be with this person, you're going to stick around and do what it takes to make it work. This is why the divorce rate is so high these days, because people are into these instant gratification relationships thinking that if it ain't working perfectly, oh, I got to go. There's no concept. Many people don't even understand the concept of what it takes to really sustain a healthy relationship. And the key word is healthy relationship, because there's a lot of unhealthy, toxic relationships going on out there. But that's another conversation. Understand that if you're going to be involved with someone, you are investing more than just your time and attention. You have got to be ready to be accountable for your actions. You are taking on responsibilities as the man. You are taking on responsibilities to say that you are going to do what needs to be done to be with this woman. You want her to understand that you are about her 100%. You are serious about making this thing go home. Now, if you're not serious, no one's saying you have to be, but you, as he said, we have to be clear, gentlemen. You can't be in a mindset of, if I can't have her, nobody can, or I'm gonna keep her at bay so she don't go be with somebody else because I don't want to lose all this that I got in front of me. We have to be honest with ourselves first and recognize that when we're not ready for a relationship, we're not ready for a relationship. And further, convey that information to her so that she understands where you're coming from, and then she can make a conscious decision, as he stated, and decide how she's going to keep her feelings to herself or potentially move on. And as men, we have to accept that if that's the choice that they make, then that's the choice they make. And then maybe we need to focus more on getting ourselves ready to be in a relationship versus hopping around from one bed to the next. Because the reality of it is, even in that, we're only adding to the problem. There was a conversation I heard the other day where someone was saying, or I've heard it before, where women's body counts are a bad thing. That any woman with a high body count is to be looked down upon or shamed or frowned upon. But I don't mean to be the person to blow your bubble, gentlemen, but we're part of that equation. She can't have a high body count if we ain't running up through her. I told you in the beginning, folks gonna get their feelings hurt, but it's okay. I still love you. As a brother, I still love you. Take yourself out of the equation. Stop chasing these women and treating them like objects just to be slept with. And ladies, you gotta do your part too. You got to know when to say when, because we're both part of the same issue. We're both creating that problem.
First of all, let's deal with the 4 essentials. In order for the relationship to work at all, you got to have humility. A lot of times we don't have humility. If the relationship is based on ego, it's not a relationship. You see that? Ego means you hear me, but I don't have to hear you. That's not a relationship. That's a master-slave relationship, where you have one person who has all the power and the other person who does not. And to that point, that is a very toxic situation we see in our community too, you see, which goes down another road of where you should not be dating if you have low self-esteem, because people with low self-esteem will always be taken advantage of in the dating arena. And too many men and women are out there looking for their ideal mate, but you don't have the ideal self-esteem in order to engage the type of mate that you want. Is your self-esteem at a level that this type of person would want you?
Ooh, absolutely.
But getting back to those 4 essentials, you need humility. I got to be humble enough to be quiet when she's wrong, to hear her out. I got to be humble enough to remain quiet while she's expressing her points about me. Everything she just said may be wrong. She may have accused me of cheating. She may have accused me of all kinds of things, but guess what? This is her truth in this moment. Let me shut the up. Let her say what she needs to say. We want to give her back the same energy she's giving us. That's a gridlock. We don't move nowhere. You got to have humility. The next thing you got to have is you got to have communication. One of the biggest mistakes we have in our relationships in the Black community, we want our partners to read our minds. If you're in a relationship with a woman who needs you to read her mind, that is an emotionally immature woman and you need to end it. A woman should be able to tell a man what she wants and how she feels. And a man should be able to tell a woman what he wants and how he feels, because it goes both ways. Whenever you're in a relationship and somebody expects you to read their mind, as I've often said to sisters, I'm a psychologist, not a psychic. You understand? I observe and evaluate. I can't read. You see? So tell me how you feel. The reason why a lot of sisters would rather us feel them out than communicate to us how they feel is they're afraid of rejection. They don't want to verbalize it because they're afraid it may get rejected. So they would rather you read the mind so they don't have to garner the audacity to tell you exactly how they're feeling.
Humility and communication are two very important things you need for a healthy relationship on both sides. If you can't come into a relationship understanding that you're not going to be right all the time and your way isn't going to go all the time, then you have no business being in a relationship. You don't understand that a relationship involves compromise and sacrifice. It's not one-sided. If it is one-sided, then it's not a real relationship. It's important as men that we understand that we have to be humble when it comes to relationships. We can't come in Billy Badass and want to run shit and not be open to hearing the other side of the story or getting her opinion, which is very valid more times than not. In a relationship that I deem healthy, you need to have communication with your partner because that woman's opinion matters. She can weigh in on things and have inside information that you may not understand. We both come into the relationship with our own strengths and our own weaknesses. And if she happens to be stronger in a different area, of course I'm going to yield to her opinion and her thought process because she has more knowledge on this. Anything else beyond that, if I happen to be someone who knows about something, I'm going to take her suggestions and her opinions even still into consideration as I'm making my decision. Because I understand that the decisions that I'm making are not only going to affect me, they're going to affect her as well. And as such, she should have some say, she should have an opinion and weigh in on things that affect all of us.
And the reason why I don't believe we are there yet, if I look at it from a therapeutic standpoint, in order for me to get to a place of resolve, to a place of solution, I have to be willing to empathically hear the other side out. We don't hear the other side. We talk to each other, but we do not listen. It's yelling. The women are yelling at the brothers. The brothers are yelling at the women. I have yet to hear a serious conversation on YouTube that involved reflective listening. How can we do better as men to not disappoint our women? So if we as men want to improve the relationship opportunities for our grandchildren's grandchildren, we have to be much more careful with the hearts of our women, because whatever pain we put in her, she's going to transmit psychosocially to her daughter without even being conscious of it.
The second thing you talked about was communication. We don't talk. Now, ladies, you have to understand that in order for men to speak, you have to help to create a safe space to have that kind of conversation. Men are inherently not transparent because to be transparent taps into our emotional state. And we're taught, as I said before, not to be emotional. And in today's age, with everybody being on get back as far as social media is concerned, it's very scary to be transparent with any one person, because you don't know if things go south tomorrow. Next thing you know, they're outside having a conversation or posting something online about you, this personal information that's putting you on Front Street, and you don't want to be there. There has to be a level of trust between the both of us and a safe space created where we are comfortable being transparent and willing to open ourselves up and be vulnerable, allowing you to see that side, the side that we keep hidden, that we were taught to keep hidden.
And here's a big problem we have. We think we've met our match when we get into a relationship where we never argue and there's no type of conflict or disagreement. That's a trap. You know why that's a trap? Everybody has a pain body. You got one, I got one, they got one. What is a pain body? That is an energy that you carry within your soul. It's a deep part of your unconscious that contains the memory of every negative experience you ever had in your life. From the time you got bullied, from your father spanking you in front of your friends, your girlfriend cheating on you, everything you went through negative is in this pain body. If you've never seen it activated in your queen to be, it ain't time to get married yet, because you have to determine whether or not you can live with her pain body when it gets activated.
Relationships that don't have any kind of static or friction, there's a concern for that. And by static and friction, I'm not talking about all out knockdown, drag out fights. But when you have two people that come together, clearly you guys are not of the same mindset, value system, 100% across the board. So there's bound to be points in time when you guys may butt heads or have a difference of opinion. And again, it doesn't mean you have to get into a whole argument, but there has to be moments where you disagree. Gentlemen, we cannot be yes men. You cannot cater to a woman and say okay and be agreeable to everything that she says or does. That's not fair to her, and it's damn sure not fair to you, because you're not being honest.
How can you fully love if you're too afraid to get hurt?
Right.
And if you can't fully love because you're too afraid to get hurt, you have no business dating in the first place. Because what you might mistake for love is nothing more than a psychologically unhealthy attachment or addiction for someone else's presence in your life to validate you. Right now, we got an epidemic of black men killing their women. That wasn't love. You couldn't kill somebody you loved. You know what was going on? He was addicted to her presence in his life. And you have a lot of traumatized black people running around thinking they're in love with people. You're not in love. You are simply addicted to their presence in your life. They serve a purpose for you. And if you don't really understand what love is, oftentimes clinginess, attachment, thirstiness, and addiction is called love, and it's not. Love don't hurt. If it hurts, it has to be trauma.
Another part of a relationship that's important is understanding that it could end. And if it does, you're going to be okay. I know we talked in the top where we're saying, we rush out and we try to jump from to another relationship because of the fear of having to be by ourselves and cope with our own trauma. But the reality of it is understanding that we may disagree to a point that we can't be together, and it's all right. Because if you care about that person, you should care about them being happy and being in the best situation possible that they could be, even if that means not being with you. That may be hard to hear for some people who are now sitting back and thinking about the relationships they're in and understanding that maybe they're not on as solid ground as they thought, or maybe there's some question marks that they have that need to get answered. Being able to sit down and address your feelings with each other and having an open dialogue is imperative if you want to have a healthy relationship. I'm not saying that you're going to sit down on one conversation and solve all the world's problems. No. But what you have to do is you have to foster A, creating a space where you can have those kind of conversations, and B, building upon opening yourself up, being more vulnerable over time, getting to that comfort space where you feel like you can share those kind of things with her or him or whoever, so that guys can get closer. That's the point. Relationships are about getting together. The bonding, the connection is what makes a relationship strong. If you all are living in a superficial world where all we do is get together and have dinner or go out and do things fun and fancy free, but we don't spend time actually getting to know each other, to understand each other, what kind of relationship do you expect to have? How do you expect to have any kind of future together if that's what you're looking for?
Love is unconditional. If it's conditions on it, it ain't love. It's a contract. And that's okay if both of you agree on those terms. She may agree. We have a pleasure contract. We got an economic contract where you're going to take care of me. And as long as you take care of me, I'm going to be your woman. But that's a contract. That's not love. Contracts are different from love. Why? Contracts are conditional. Right. Love is unconditional. If I love my queen, what if she comes home one day and say, hey, baby, I don't want to work this. I don't want to be a lawyer no more. But if I only married her because I like the way her law degree looks on Dr. Umar in public, you see how this goes. Love is, when you love somebody, you are 100% unapologetically and unconditionally committed to that person's best interest, even if it is to your loss. What if your fiance come home and say, listen, babe, I had a long conversation with my ex-husband. I never thought I would look at this again, but we left a lot on the table together. I enjoyed the time we had. I think that man might still be my soulmate. I got to move on. I might still hurt because I loved her, right? But if that love is true, if you feel that's who you meant to spend the rest of your life with, I gotta love you and want the best for you. Most of us cannot do that. What we call love is limited to your investment in me. You see that?
Yeah.
Anytime they step outside of the box we created for them, we get angry because that was not love. You had conditions on it.
When you love somebody, you have to accept them truly for who they are. There's something that I have believe in 100%. When I tell someone that I see you, that means I see you at your worst and at your best. I see your flaws, I see your attributes, and I accept you for who you are. I understand that you have room for improvement, just the same way I have room for improvement, but I'm going to do everything I can do. I'm going to pour into you to make sure that you improve yourself. I'm going to help you get to the place you want to be. You tell me what your dreams, your aspirations, your goals are. I'm behind you 1,000%. I don't shame you for not being where you're supposed to be when we met, for having a ways to go in your journey. I don't hold that against you because I understand that I am in the same position. So how can I possibly look down upon you as having to not completed your journey, yet I'm on the same journey you are, just a different side of the track. We got to understand that we're all evolving still, ladies and gentlemen. We got to understand that. And when you're in a relationship, you cannot take a one-sided perspective look and say, okay, I'm only going to see that you got problems and you got this to deal with, ignoring the fact that we have our own issues and things we haven't resolved either. We are not necessarily at the peak of our career or the peak of our life when we get into a relationship. There is growing that has to take place, not only individually, but now because you're a couple, you have to grow as a couple together going forward in the relationship. There's growth there that needs to happen because you don't come in knowing this person off the rip and can figure them out, understand them 100%. That takes time, that takes effort and energy to understand that. And I think we take relationships for granted more times than not, especially when it comes to love, because we're so quick to throw that term out there. I love you. You love me. Are you sure? Are you sure? Because to love somebody else requires putting that person oftentimes ahead of yourself. Being willing to compromise some of the things that you enjoy and like because you want to make sure that they are represented, they get seen. It's having conversations, having the strong communication where you discuss things to figure out what we are going to do. It becomes a we situation. You have to lose the ability to be selfish when it comes to relationships. It's a partnership. You both are helpmates to each other to lift each other up and get the best out of each other. And as he said, even in that, I have to be okay with the fact that if you decide that we're not going to be and we're not going to work, I love you enough to see you happy somewhere else. Because ultimately, that's all I want for you anyway, is to be your best and for you to be happy. And if that means it's not with me, then that means it's not with me. I'm not going to like it, not going to necessarily appreciate it. And as he said, I'm going to hurt from it, but I still want the best for you ultimately. This conversation, I don't know if you've even had a chance to really sit back and kind of absorb this, but as I watched it, I had to pause it a few times to really sit back and let it resonate and sink in and think about, to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to be the best person for my relationship, making sure that I'm understanding the importance of communication and resolving that anywhere that I'm lacking, I'm going to move forward. Not necessarily because Dr. Umar is an authority in the field, but sometimes when you hear something said a certain way, it clicks.
One of the quickest ways for your woman to tiptoe act out the back door on your ass is for you not to spend quality time with her because you provided her with all the material likings that she desires. She needs time. Remember, men cheat for sex and comfort. Women cheat for attention and understanding. They want someone to understand them. That's why when our women cheat, we hurt more. Because we know if she spread them thighs, she felt him. You know she had a connection with that man. And that's why we got to make sure we putting time in, because I'm seeing too many brothers. Oh yeah, I bought her the Benz. We got the big house, 2 pools. I just took her to Vegas. But outside of that, you ain't putting no time in. And guess what? She gonna end up spending time with a guy who ain't got half of what you got. Because for a woman, although, yeah, they can be materialistic, they like the physical things you can provide them with, but at the end of the day, she's still a woman and she needs a man who can pour into her soul. If you cannot pour into that woman's soul, she will leave you.
Time and attention in relationships is important. Yes, we're out here slaying dragons, trying to make ends meet every day, but you gotta find that balance where you're spending time with your woman. And it's not always about going out and spending all kinds of crazy money on dinner and a show and all that kind of stuff. That stuff is nice, but sometimes just having quiet moments, sitting around the house, having conversation, doing something together, spending time with a woman in general is important. They crave it. They want to be in our presence, and if they really love you, they relish that more than anything else. Going out and doing things, like I said, is nice, but you're still with them and they want to enjoy that moment with you is what they're going for. But ultimately, the time needed is something that they require. And we as men have to make sure that we don't lose sight of that in our daily goings on, because it's very easy to get focused on or hyper focused on being the entrepreneur, running your business, making your money, getting your bag, and forgetting the fact that this woman over here, your support system, your encouragement, your muse, your person is there waiting for you to come back home, because she should be a place of peace. She should be a place of peace for you. I look at my woman as a fortress of solitude. When I come home from work, the first thing I want to do is get next to her, because I'm at peace. I ain't got to worry about no stress. I can focus on us in those moments. And she provides that. And I'm hoping that it provides the same for her in return when she comes home dealing with all the drama she deals with at her job.
So as I said earlier, a lot of us use relationships as a drug to distract us from the problems we don't want to solve going on in ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that means all through Atlanta, you got men and women who are very unhealthy, looking for love. They can't find it because the trauma blocking it. But they will come into your life and fuck your life up because they didn't want to fix their own. And then blame you for why they unhappy when they were miserable before they met you. I'm bringing this up because there's a certain type of a spiritual vampire we got to deal with in the Black community. And that's the domestically abusive Black man. We got too many Black men beating on our sisters. And now, right now, we got a campaign of Black men killing our sisters, killing them. We never did this before. We doing it now. So I want to make a plea to all Black men. If you know you got demons in your closet, unmet childhood needs, issues, rape, abuse, molestation, abandonment, please find somebody to help you process your shit. Because if you don't, especially if your issues revolve around your mother, sooner or later, the woman in your life is going to objectify to the mother you hate, and you're going to hurt her.
I've discussed this in previous videos where therapy in the Black community is a very taboo subject. People don't like talking about it, especially when it comes to Black men. We have this tendency that we don't want to hear about it. We don't want to discuss it. Meanwhile, we know deep down within our soul, we know that we need it the most. I know some women are going to argue against that, and that's fine, but I'm speaking from what my perspective and how I feel about that. I think that Black men are more traumatized to some degrees than women are. And we have been taught and told to not even address it, not even face the fact that we have these needs. And this is part of the reason why we have, as Dr. Umar pointed out, this epidemic of violence and domestic abuse in relationships right now, because of a lot of unchecked or uncared for traumatic damage, hurt, and pain that people are carrying around, thinking that they can just deal with it themselves. If I just suppress it and push it down all the way down, I'll get past it. I mentioned before that after my first divorce, that I rushed into a relationship right away. I was someone who was suppressing a lot of emotion and pain and hurt. I was used to that. And I believed in my mind that when I told my second wife that I was over the first situation, I believed 100% that I was over it. Not knowing just how badly and how traumatic it was to me and how much it affected me, self-esteem, confidence, emotional torture and pain. I had no idea how much it had affected me. And every time I turned around in the second marriage, it always turned up. I was always, these traumatic issues were popping up: insecurities, distrust, self-esteem issues, not feeling seen or validated. All those things cropped up and made the relationship even worse than it had to be. So I'm joining Dr. Umar in the struggle and begging Black men to please, if you need help, don't be afraid to reach out. I'm gonna leave a link in the description of a website where you can find a Black therapist. Take the time, just review the information. I'm not asking you to commit to it. It's not an affiliate, it's not a sponsor. I don't get any money from it. But at the end of the day, I want to see us do better. And I feel like if we know better, we can do better. And if you go here, attend the little seminar online, it's a Zoom meeting. They'll connect you with a Black therapist, and you can get some help. Sometimes just being in a space around other Black men who are going through the same thing may be enough to get you to see that you can be helped and open yourself up to that help. Dr. Umar touched on a lot of things in this interview, as I said at the beginning, and I don't know about you, but I walked away from the interview feeling like I had learned a lot more about myself and really got a better understanding when it came to expectations and relationships, and how to see things through a different lens and maybe approach some things that I thought I figured out one way from another angle. The communication aspect, being present, spending time, understanding what love is, understanding the work involved with regard to relationships is important. And I feel like we don't have enough discussions of this nature. And as I said earlier, I would love to have a conversation with you guys if you want to do that. I feel like that if we can try to start building these safe spaces where people can come together, Black folk can come together, men and women, and not be at each other's throats all the time, we're going to have a better chance of perhaps building the solution, a path to solution, brick by brick. Now, before you go, did you hear what Cat Williams had to say on his recent interview with Shannon Sharp on Club Shay Shay, or what Tyler Perry said during his interview on Keep It Positive, Sweetie? If not, check out these links over here and let me know your thoughts about the conversations.